Hey guys, I'd just like to begin by thanking the CSSP and the ASOC for organising tonight. Yeah, we're looking forward to it tonight. I think it's going to be really fun and exciting. Okay, first I think we need to... First I think we should get clear on the topic and what we're actually going to be arguing about tonight. The teachings of the Catholic Church, I take them to refer to everything the Church holds to be true, as well as the moral teachings of the Church, which are included in these teachings. So I'll be referring to these teachings collectively as Catholicism. And when would a teaching count as valuable? I think there are two senses in which something can be valuable. First of all, there's a pragmatic kind of sense. So if believing something leads to good actions or to an overall increase in well-being, there's a sense in which you could say that that teaching is valuable. However, there's also a second sense in which a teaching is valuable, and that would be if it's worthy of belief. In other words, if it's likely to be true. And it's in this second sense that I'd like to say I think the teachings of the Church are indeed valuable. My aim tonight is to compare the teachings of Catholicism, specifically the teaching that the universe is fundamentally purposeful and created by God. And I'm going to compare that to an atheistic worldview, and I want to argue that there is reason to think that our experience of reality is accounted for better by Catholicism than by atheism. So I want to establish three basic contentions tonight. First of all, I think objective moral facts exist. Secondly, I think that if atheism is true, there's no basis for believing in objective moral facts. And thirdly, I think that if Catholicism is true, then there is basis for believing in objective moral facts. So if my atheist opponents tonight do happen to undermine one or all of these claims, then I think my case will be undermined. However, if they don't, I think it logically follows that there is a part of reality that is accounted for by Catholicism that atheism can't account for, and hence Catholicism is of value in the 21st century. So, my first contention, objective moral facts exist. I think there are two good reasons to believe that objective moral facts exist. First of all, we make universal moral judgments, and these are inherently objective in nature. For example, I think it's fair to say that moral progress has occurred over history. If we think about times and cultures in the past, things like slavery and racism were prevalent at certain times and in certain cultures. I think we're privileged to live in an age where neither slavery nor racism are largely prevalent. And I think that counts as moral progress. I think that this is an inherently universal judgment, because it's not one that just applies to you, or to me, or to everyone in this room, or even to our culture. It actually applies across all times and across all ages, and hence it is independent of personal belief about morals. Another reason for objective moral facts is that when we engage in rational discourse or discussions with people, we actually presuppose objective moral values. Namely, I'm thinking of the fact that it's objectively a duty of the other person to pursue the truth and to be convinced by rational argumentation if you're engaged in a rational argument. So you might deny this, right? But even if you say, why should I believe that this is an objective moral value, you'd actually still probably want to presuppose that the other person who's listening to you should accept what you're saying is true or rational. And so I don't think you actually get to escape from the fact that the objective good of pursuing truth and accepting rational argumentation is actually an objective moral fact. In sum, I think it's possible to reject objective morality, but I also think that you would lose the right to engage in some rational argumentation and also to make universal moral judgments. So I think that there is good reason to believe in objective moral facts. My second contention is that if atheism is true, then objective moral facts don't exist. On an atheistic worldview, I think, I hope this is a fair characterization. There's no personal creator of the universe, there's no deep guiding force of the universe, there are no angels or fairies hiding out the back of the universe. Reality is fundamentally uncoverable by the natural sciences, or at least capable of being so. So I think in a worldview like this, what we would have is a universe that consists ultimately of matter, physical laws of nature, and purposeless biological life. In this picture, I think that morality would probably be grounded in our subjective desires. And that's okay. I think a lot of people actually believe that as well. But I think that's only good for for a subjective or a relative conception of morality, and not for an objective conception of morality. So my challenge to Travis and Patrick is that I want to know what objective fact of reality that's independent of subjective opinion or desire, what objective fact makes it wrong objectively for somebody to do something that you think is wrong. So, just to be clear, I'm not saying that atheists can't be moral. I think we all have an awareness of objective moral facts, and we act accordingly. But what I think is that beliefs actually need to correspond to the reality that our worldview is. And I think in an atheistic worldview, there's no basis for believing in objective, unchanging morality. And I think doing so would actually be rationally inconsistent. My third contention is that if the teachings of the Catholic Church are true, there is a sound basis for objective morality. On a Catholic worldview, the universe is fundamentally, objectively purposeful. The whole universe has an objective purpose, and one of these would be to lead to human life. And everything in the universe also acts for the fulfillment of objective goals. Human beings, being part of the universe, are like this. And human beings have an objective purpose as well, and Catholics call this human nature. I think that if human nature has a real objective purpose, a goal towards which every human being fulfills themselves in, then I think we do have a clear foundation for objective morality. The reason is that objective moral duties are about what people should do. It's about So objective moral duties are what people should do, and I think purposes and goals are fundamentally the same thing. They illustrate what should be done by something. So I think if human beings have objective purposes, then they would be an objective reality towards which our objective moral duties would correspond. Furthermore, judgments about good and bad, right and wrong, would also have objective meaning because they'd be judgments about whether an action or an outcome is objectively in line with a natural purpose. I should mention here that God is necessary for this conception of morality because a purposeful universe implies an intentional being. Just like any machine or something existing for a particular purpose in the world would imply a creator whose intentions correspond to that purpose. Or like an artwork with a purpose would exist in virtue of an artist whose intentions would correspond to that purpose. I should also clarify here that I am not constructing a view of morality that says that we're just doing what God tells us to do. And so this is a very common conception of what religious morality is like. And if this were the case, if this actually were the case, then it wouldn't explain morality at all, because if someone just tells you to do something, it still leaves open the question of whether it's actually good or bad. Luckily, it's obvious, hopefully, that that's not what I have characterized Catholic morality as. What I have said is that objective moral values and duties are grounded in human nature, which exists naturally in the world. And it's objectively ordered towards the fulfillment of goals and ends. And so, love, freedom, physical health, mental and spiritual health, I would count all of these as objective purposes towards which humans are objectively ordered to, and so they would count as goods. Let me sum up what I've tried to say tonight. I believe I've given good reasons for, first of all, why objective moral facts exist, and I don't think that atheism can account for them. Furthermore, I think that on a Catholic worldview, there's a clear foundation for these moral facts, namely in the objectively purposeful nature of humanity, which is ultimately grounded in God. And so to conclude, I mean, there's obviously a lot more to the teachings of the Catholic Church than just the existence of God and, the existence of a purposeful universe that provides for objective morality. However, I think that these teachings really do constitute fundamental foundations on which most of the other teachings of the Church rest. And I also think that this is what fundamentally distinguishes a Catholic worldview from an atheistic one. And so I do think that these are good reasons for Catholicism being more valuable than atheism in the 21st century.